Yeah, I'm not going to press that button again because it was a little bit of that. Yeah, I didn't turn the aircon this morning because I couldn't tell whether it was hot or cold, even though it's windy outside. You know when you're like, it's windy and looks gloomy, but I'm not freezing. Anyway, but if we get cold, we can turn it on. Hi, I'm Harriet. I am the lactation consultant here, midwife. I've done child and family health after midwifery because I wanted a way out of shift work, but I never actually got a job as a child and family health nurse. I had babies instead. So I've got 3 boys. Oldest is 9, middle is 6, and the youngest has just turned 4. And I'm on the fence about another baby. On the fence. Don't tell Catherine. She'll either say yes or no. But today, basically, you just get my whole brain. I come unprepared for these because historically I have come prepared and not done anything with what I've brought because everyone has questions that then leads into conversation. Are we fake coughing or real coughing? Yeah, okay. We've had that before where one of the boys was into a fake coughing mood and all the babies by the end of it were fake coughing. Yeah.
Fake cough. Yeah. The other week, who was it? Valerie boycott actually coughed, and then she was like,
It's the black lung. That's what it is. Yeah. Yeah. It's not a real one. It's a fake one. You can kind of tell if they're putting their tongue out for it. You're like, no, it's not a real one. The raspberries work the same as well. So once someone starts doing it, the rest will. So my forte is obviously breastfeeding and feeding, but I like helping families with sleep, which is related to working with what we are biologically given. So we've got like foundations for sleep, and it's not talking about us changing our behaviour so that our baby's behaviour changes around sleep. It's basically optimising what's happening with your baby, their circadian rhythm and sleep pressure, and then we can optimize other things in our world to help with their nervous system, the way that they regulate, how comfortable they are in their body. Eating and feeding and sleeping are all innately linked. So I just find helping people with sleep where they've tried every other thing and then they can come to me at the end. It tends to be the best way to do it because usually there's something else going on, or in my experience, mums know when there's just something else and they don't know what it is. I can often figure something out which helps us navigate a little bit easier which path is best to take to help with the overall stuff. My first baby, I was a midwife, so I thought I knew stuff, but I didn't. He was a really, I actually had a really quick normal birth, which is the last thing I expected, and a baby that was significantly tongue-tied. And I thought as a midwife I could diagnose them. I just looked at him and he's like, oh, his tongue tied to the tip of his tongue behind his gum line. So he couldn't really feed well. And I only have one working boob. This one I've had the ducts removed out of it. So I get the milk but no exit. So it's not that fun. But anyway, I have one boob that works. It's great. Love it. And he was really, really, really tongue-tied. So his feeding was not optimised, but it was the best that we could get. He never was able to take a bottle. So I had an oversupply with one boob, which, again, not that fun. A colicky baby that would feed all day long, and he would wake 45-minutely forever. So that was just him, and I knew I didn't want to sleep train him because I was like, there's something else going on. But all of the lactation consultants I saw were just like, well, you can't block feed, and he doesn't want to take a bottle. And we snipped his tongue tie, and that was about it. But once I started learning all the things that I know, I realised that he was in fact still tongue-tied because they had just snipped the webbing at the front that they could see. And when you do a manoeuvre to have a look, he was completely restricted. He couldn't say his T's. So twinkle twinkle was my baseline for him, and at 8.5 we had a revision. And then he could sing Twinkle Twinkle. He could breathe a bit better. Yeah, he had grommets, turbinates, all the ENT stuff that goes along with tongue ties and oral function. And from there, his behaviour got better. He's able to breathe, talk, hear. It made a difference. So that's my kind of background. So I feel like whenever I'm helping people navigate their world, it comes from a very functional side of things. And I always am very honest about it, because all of the practitioners here are kind of guided by the experiences that we have that lead us to study the things that we end up studying. Makes us passionate, but yeah. So anyway, today we can talk about sleep. It's usually a hot topic anyway. I'll talk to you about what those foundations are for sleep and how we can optimize just the foundations. And from there, we'll end up talking about all sorts of things. Whatever's going on in your world, it tends to kind of work that way. But please tell me about you guys, because I haven't met you.
Well, I'm Claire. Hi. And this is Freddie. She is 9 weeks. It's my first baby.
Yeah. I love the name Freddie.
Yeah.
She's very sweet. Hi.
I'm April. This is Ivy, and she is 4 months on Wednesday, I think. And my first baby as well.
I love her bangs.
And the whole thing, she's got so much hair. When she came out, they're like, she's got heaps really dark, and me and my partner are both like naturally very blonde. And I was like, what? That's not my baby.
That's not what I ordered. I have this like real soft spot for babies with hair. Like before I had babies, I would love babies with hair. I remember I had a little preemie baby I looked after who had ice white hair, but like long, like a mop.
Yeah. Wow.
And I was able to braid her hair while her parents were away, and I was like,
come back, it's all crimped.
and it was in like this perfect side braid, and I was just like, I just hope I have babies with hair, and my babies have no hair, no eyebrows, no eyelashes. They just look like bruised potatoes for like 3 months.
It's funny. It's going light of it. It is going. The roots are definitely like really light. Yeah.
It's funny how it changes, and the eye colours change as well as they get older. Yeah, wild.
It is weird.
It just means that you can't predict anything.
No. Nothing.
I'm introducing this now. I'm Tally, this is Ruth. She is 4.5 months, I think. Maybe a bit more. And yeah, my first baby.
Yeah. How do you spell Rue?
R-U-E.
My last baby, his middle name's Rue, but I-O-U-X, because I knew he was going to be fat, and Rue is a base of a pudding. And I was like, Rue works for both girls and boys, and as a middle name, I was like, sweet, I've sorted the middle name. We didn't have a first name, long story. He ended up having his first name changed when he was 3 months old, because it's hard to name people.
Yeah.
And then naming 3 boys is not fun either, so do not recommend.
Babies, naming is such a random thing. It's like they're going to live with this forever.
Well, that's it. And then if you choose a name that doesn't feel right, and then you're sitting there being like, the longer we go, the worse it felt. I was like, he's 3 months, we'll just change it now. We just shifted it all across. Oh, yeah? I have... I've seen a Rue with R-O-O, yeah. I have seen a Rue, but it was a boy Rue.
Yeah.
And, yeah. Anyway. So, are you guys all on board with talking about sleep, or would you prefer to talk about feeding? Is there anything,
All of the above.
burning questions, anything like that to get out of the way?
I think they're the two kind of topics.
Yeah, they work side by side.
Oh,
So I'll start with the feeding side of things, because it's just going to be super generalized what I talk about. And the main thing being that breastfeeding and bottle feeding can be ways of babies to regulate their nervous systems the quickest way possible. So this is why babies might feed in the middle of the night and it's like a 3-second feed and they're back to sleep. Because it's not just about eating, it's about regulating our nervous systems. Oh, is she going to get in? Yeah. Hi. Every ounce of me tested getting stuck behind an old plater. Like 20 minutes going 40 to 70. It's only when you got to be somewhere. And you're coming a fair distance as well.
I was just like, don't rush to the company, that'll be me one day. So I have patience with her. I'm like, it really teach them how to drive around and down, don't get them on this road.
In that kind of peak hour time, yeah, no, I feel you. Hi, Alison.
Hello.
Nice to see you. I'm just saying that today I'll talk about sleep and feeding, but the feeding side of it obviously very generalised, and how they're innately linked. Yeah. But if we'll go through random questions as well, I don't prepare for today. I literally wing it, because the times I have prepared, it goes off in different tangents anyway. Yeah. So the reason I say that feeding and sleeping is innately linked is because we need our nervous system to be as dialed down and calm as possible to slip into sleep. So if we have a baby that's wired and might not be feeding in a functional way, it means that the times that they do breastfeed or bottle feed, they might not be using that time as a tool to dial down. And they're just getting through the feed, and then they're going to take more parenting around the feeds to work on the sleep side of things. And I see it quite a lot where people will be like, my baby might drift off to sleep on the boob as soon as I take them off, they're awake again. Or it might be that they don't fall asleep at the breast, and then they're having to spend a lot of time to try and regulate them to fall asleep. So there's all different scenarios with that. But the main principles of feeding that we know that can help with regulating or the way that we regulate is to protect our airway whenever we feed. So like you and I, if we were laying down in bed on our back and I was to try and feed you water, you might be old enough now to deal with it.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. It depends. But realistically, you're going to have to roll off to your side to drink that water so that your brain knows that you're completely safe. Your airway is not compromised at all. So whenever I talk about feeding, just in regards to regulation, I'm talking to families about moving their babies so that their babies are really on their side or happily on their belly on you. So we really should be using our body as what holds our baby's weight, and our arms are supporting that. And we're supporting our arms with pillows, not the baby with a pillow. It's all variations. Everyone's going to do their own thing with that, but as long as you know the principle that we need to protect our airway when we're drinking, it means that you can start to kind of play around with what's working and what's maybe not working. All babies are born with an innate set of reflexes as well. So have you all heard of the breast crawl? I'm assuming you have. So I'm a huge advocate for babies at any age to do breast crawls. So we kind of hear about it and then we go, we'll try and do it at birth, and there's this like golden window of opportunity to do it. But realistically, with the way that we have our babies and how quickly we kind of move from room to room, and if we are needing our babies just fed, we just feed them and then that's it. But if we get our babies feeding where they take themselves to work, latch themselves, feed the way that their body is firing their reflex to do so, it means that they're able to move freely, for one. When we move freely, we actually release fascia and fascial tension that holds us in certain ways. Think of your baby like little puppet strings on one side and versus the other. We're all like a pyramid of puppet strings from our tongue to our toes. So if we're tighter on one side of our body, we might pull ourselves that way a little bit easier than the other side. We might feed better on one boob versus the other because we've got puppet strings that we're kind of working against on one side and they're working for us on the other. So that's where we start going, how easy or how challenging it is for a baby to move across both sides. The easiest way to get them to do it is by leaving them alone and letting them move their body as often as you can. And we get taught a very different way of doing it, where we support them, hold our boob, and basically gift it to them. But if we allow them to do what their brain's wanting to do, it means that each time we feed our babies, it's a chance for them to regulate, to stretch out their bodies, to move their muscles, to latch in a way that is protective of their airway. Because if you're on top of them and they're underneath you, they're not going to do that. But if you're laid back with your baby on you, their airway is protected the whole time. To latch in a more functional way as well, we need our babies' tongues to extend out, elevate and cup. Once they get that seal of the breast, the back part of their tongue drops down. That changes the pressure in a vacuum, and then that's where they're managing a flow. They're basically getting their tongue behind that nipple and encouraging milk towards their body. But if we are taught and always just revert back to grabbing our boob and putting them on, what babies might get used to doing is opening their mouth but pulling their tongue back rather than going in with their tongue and accepting breast tissue themselves. So sometimes just allowing them the chance to do it themselves means they change their patterns like that. They get a deeper latch. Majority of the time when I'll go to people's house with breastfeeding problems, and then I suggest very lightly that we just do less. They're like, I'm really scared, my nipples are really sore, I don't want to do that. And I'll be like, okay, and I'll explain the reasons why. And I'd say 9 out of 10 times it's a better latch than before. So there is method to madness, but it gives our babies a chance to really move their bodies, and breastfeeding is more of an activity rather than just a moment where we feed them and that's it. So if you have the opportunities in the day to do breast crawls around witching hour, excellent.
That's the way to do like the breast crawl.
The breast crawl is getting yourself as comfortable as possible.
Yeah.
Usually this kind of reclined.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the weight of your baby's on your chest.
Okay.
Yeah. And if you put them about kissing distance away, both breasts out,
Yeah.
and use your arms as like bowling alley rails. Because you're not actually going to hold them and move them. You're going to let them move. And they will overshoot the mark and end up in an armpit. If they're looking at you and just yelling at you, if they're just yelling at you, that's where you use your instincts. If there's something in your body telling you that you need to help them a little bit, that's there for a reason. I don't want you to feel like a prisoner underneath a baby that's yelling at you. Yeah. So sometimes it'll be like, okay, I'll do a quick normal feed, tick the box of hunger, and then send to them and see what they do.
Yeah.
For some families, I'll go, let's just do breast crawls for 48 hours and see what happens. Yeah. If the baby's small enough and young enough and fresh, sometimes that's all we need to do to correct the way that they've been latching. So in a kind of normal scenario, if we were to put our baby in our center of our chest and allow them to move freely, they would feed off the breast you did not feed off last. So the more full breast.
They'll go to. That's so smart.
Babies are very trustworthy. And then once they've finished on that side, they should pull themselves off.
Wait, what was that? You go to the side, they're being let up.
So the one you did not feed off last.
Oh.
Yeah.
What they know? They know which one's full.
Yeah. And so
So smart.
if you then recenter them, they should, keyword there, should go to the other side. So if I have a baby and we're doing full breast crawls and they're always going left or they're always going right, I'm looking at the pull of their body more so than what's happening here. Or looking at the reflexes. Because we know they're born with a set of reflexes to get them to the breast, to get them to latch, it means that if their reflexes aren't firing evenly, then we can work on reflex expression. Breast crawls help them express their reflexes. The more you express a reflex, meaning, so for example, the more you express it to completion, the quicker your brain ticks it off the list and it's not a thing anymore. Yeah?
Imagine armpits smell has something to do with this as well.
Your whole body smell.
What would come with not being so smelly without fear?
As soon as breastfeeding's feeling more confident.
Oh, okay.
I think it's all within reach. You've got to remember there's glands around your nipple. The little pimply ones, the Montgomery glands, they have oil secretions within it that smell significantly like you and your amniotic fluid and your breast milk. So your baby's going to be pulled to that smell alone. And as I said, your breast milk tastes like your own special amniotic fluid that you had when they were inside you. So everything's designed for your babies to go back to it. And equally both sides. So if babies aren't doing those things, it gives me hints as to what we look at first. Is it reflexes? Is it their body tension? Is it their anatomy in their mouth? Is it just the muscle patterns that they're used to? There's all different things. We've also got cranial nerves that are involved with feeding. So the easiest example of cranial nerve dysfunction is babies that, this is the most common one, the sneezing baby, the baby that's going cross-eyed, the baby that's hiccuping a lot in between feeds. That's one of the cranial nerves that might be a little bit pinched on one side versus the other, and then we can move them in different ways that softens that connection, allows it to go a little bit more even, and you're not having the baby that's constantly sneezing. Because babies do not have allergies straight away when they come out of the womb. The amount of times I'll go to people postpartum and they'll be like, oh yeah, he sneezes, just he must be the air or something, and I'll be like, yeah, nah. Then I'm looking at the babies cross-eyed at me as well, and I'll be like, okay, so we've got one of these optic nerves that runs down the nose, and then it speaks to different muscles in the mouth as well. So it's just, there's so many hints. Like I say babies have a lot of secrets. It just takes a lot of practice to learn what secret it could be and then how to actually tackle it. So that's why we have a lot of like wonderful health practitioners that just don't know what it is. And so then they'll be like, as long as they're putting on weight, they're fine.
Yeah.
So there's always different things we can look at. So that is the main things. That's that foundational stuff with feeding, and then you can see how those then trickle into how we relax our nervous system enough to sleep. Yeah. So different things I can talk to about sleep, but we'll move through, because we're talking about regulation. Have you ever been told that you just need to be regulated and calm and that will just be contagious for you and your baby? Yeah. It doesn't really work for mums. Works for other people. So if your partners are holding them and they're dysregulated, yes, they're going to copy and, feed off them. But for mums, just telling you to calm down just does not make sense. Does the opposite. Just chill out and your baby will, No, you are innately linked to your baby. So you have the same DNA as them in your brain floating around. Any baby that you've held in your body before is in your brain as parts of DNA. So you are so closely linked to your baby that you're reading their nervous system. It's the other way around. Yeah. So if your baby's got something going on, and obviously you're not meant to know, but your nervous system is going to meet them where they're at so that you can problem solve for them. If you genuinely just could calm your system and your baby borrowed it and all as well, that would be an amazing utopia, but it's not going to help when your baby doesn't have the ability to communicate to you if they need something. So mums are really cool in that way, like super, super cool, because they will keep their babies so safe, and problem solve for them, look for answers, adjust their position, change their clothes. Like, it's different for us than partners that haven't carried our babies. So those times where you happen to be asleep and you wake up in the absolute panic and check on them and they're in the deepest sleep ever, and then you shake them and then they wake up and you're like, oh no, I don't want to wake you. That's there for a reason. And one of the reasons why we as mums can't really delve down into the deep layers of sleep as easily as we used to. All babies are meant to really sleep in those first 2 layers of sleep. There's like 4 layers. I think of it like layers. Come on in. I'm recording this so we can share it again. So we usually pre-baby you kind of have 4 layers of sleep that you start off in light sleep and you get down to the deep sleep and then you come back up and down, up and down. You might not come out of sleep completely, but as you kind of rise into those lighter levels of sleep, you might move in your sleep and then that gets you back down. So babies are meant to stay in the first 2 layers of sleep, and mums, after they have their babies, pretty much stay in those 2 layers of sleep as well. So that means that if you are sleeping near your baby and they happen to be diving down into deeper levels of sleep, that's probably not the most safe for them. It then means that your level of sleep is going to come up. So if you're co-sleeping next to your baby, what we've done when we've researched mum and baby pairs that are breastfeeding, this is the breastfeeding dyad as well, if the baby does go into that deeper level of sleep that is not as safe for their airway as a lighter level of sleep, the mum will raise her level of sleep. She might shift in her sleep a little bit more, snuffle or snort, and that will bring the baby back up. Yeah. So if you happen to be in your level of light sleep and your baby then goes down into that deeper level of sleep, that's the one where you wake up in the absolute kind of like and check on them. They're in the deep level of sleep. Yeah. And she was completely fine. She's like, that's just background noise. No, it's always the way. And then you kind of look at them and you're like, I know, are they breathing? Like, what are they doing?
One of them, right? I do wear earplugs in my hostel.
Yeah.
Well, I'm still like, does that have head?
It's not to do with hearing. It's not to do with hearing. It's genuinely just to do with breathing patterns and the closeness to you. And this is part of the reason why they say to keep your babies up to 6 months in the room with you. It's to do with that research as well. Yeah, so you can wake up when they do happen to be not in that safer level of sleep. But there's reasons for everything. Like, that's the coolest thing about babies and mums. Like, if we kind of have something going on, we can kind of figure it out. It just takes a bit of effort sometimes to get to the bottom of it, but there is a way. So yeah, that's one of those foundations of how we feeding, mum's nervous system, everything is all related to sleep and how we sleep. And sorry guys, you can't go into levels 3 and 4 of sleep much anymore. Hopefully you will, but everyone's just so different. So realistically, it's just that you will not feel as rested as possible unless your brain knows he's completely cared for by someone. You might then be able to dive into the deepest sleep you've had in a long time for like 10 minutes and then you come back out. So yes, that's that. And then sleep foundations. Before I go into sleep foundations, any questions at all? Hi, I'm Harriet.
Yeah, hi, I'm Valerie. Sorry for
Nice to
being
meet you.
late.
That's all right.
With that, the sleep cycles and the sleep patterns, does that relate to how close you are to your baby, or on the same sleep surface, or being in one room is exactly the same as being in the same bed?
So it kind of has different layers to it. So first of all, if you are exclusively breastfeeding dyad, then you are more safe to like read your baby how far away they are in the same room. Yeah. Whereas the closer they are, if you're not completely breastfeeding, means that you need the closeness and proximity. So there's few different factors in there, but typically it's the breastfeeding connection, which is the quickest one to keep that ability to read. And then if we are bottle feeding, then it's just the proximity in the room. So that's why they say up until 6 months, keep them in the room with you. Yeah, because you're connected to them forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why you can read. That's why we'll wake up to the baby and the partner might not. Yeah, everyone's like, yeah. There's reasons. So yes, I've spoken a little bit about that stability as well for the babies. and having them sideways or on top of you for feeds as well. So, what else was I going to... No. I'll do this thing where I lose my train of thought and it'll come to me at 3 a.m. So if I remember something that I wanted to say, I'll just make sure I get it to you guys eventually. I'll write it down at 3 a.m. Most of you will be awake then, but I'm not going to text you then. So in regards to sleep as I do holistic sleep, meaning that I don't do sleep training. There's too many free places you can go for sleep training. I don't think you have to pay someone to do it for you or tell you how to do it. That's what the early childhood health clinics teach. They teach responsive settling, which is that Ferber method that you might see online. And that's what Tresillian does as well, which are free clinics that everyone can go to. In regards to the way that we get babies to sleep, I'm not judgmental about people that want to sleep train, because if it works for you and your family, go for gold. Do what works, what feels right. But there are some families that it doesn't feel right and they feel like it's the only way. And that's where I kind of go, there's always another way. Yeah? So, and I just don't think you need to pay the $800 for someone to tell you how to do it as well. You can go and you can go use those free clinics and they have the same information. You might find that you get a different way of explaining it each time, but if you try and see the same early childhood nurse, you're going to get the same voice as well, which you can try and do as well. So sleep training would not be effective prior to 4 months anyway. Once your baby hits 4 months of age, that's where they are getting their circadian rhythm and their circadian clock set in stone. And we can't really adjust times and things like that easily if we don't have a differentiation between day and night. So anything before 4 months of age, I say, is a bit of a free-for-all. You should just be doing what works for your baby at that time. And it's one of those things where if you feel like sleep is harder than it should be, there might be a reason for it. And we're not expecting babies to be sleeping for long periods at night anyway, because we want them stimulating your breast milk supply. If you're not breastfeeding, then they're biologically driven to feed at night because they need to grow anyway. So young babies are meant to feed at night. It's also, if you are breastfeeding, the night feeds are what are going to keep your supply going. And they're also going to tell your brain that you have a young baby and you're not due to get fertile for the next baby anytime soon. So it's what keeps your period away a little bit longer. So if we have babies that do not functionally feed, meaning they might be just stimulating the nipple, or it's just not... I think of milk supply like a cave lady deep down in your brain. And if she gets really clear orders, she knows how much milk to make and how to make it. Whereas if the messages are really sporadic, not clear, she might overcook and throw it at them. So they're the people also with like the oversupply and the strong letdown, or she might shut up shop. So if she's not getting clear messages, that's where she's like, is this a young baby or an old baby? I'm just going to do my own thing. And then all of a sudden you're fertile again for that next baby. So we also have a breast milk supply that works on our circadian rhythm. So the foundations of babies understanding day versus night is within our breast milk. So the morning milk is more plentiful. You might experience that you feel a little bit fuller in the morning. It's all a bit more free-flowing in the morning. And that's because your morning milk does have higher lactose, which is the higher energy milk. It also has cortisol in it, which tells our system we should be awake. And then as the day goes on, the composition of our milk changes. So you feel less full in the afternoon. You feel less full in the afternoon when your baby's acting more starving. They're biologically driven to return themselves to the breast and use the breast as a tool to regulate their nervous system. So whatever adventures you have throughout the day, that's their sensory cup being filled. And in the afternoon, by the time witching hour approaches, that sensory cup is overflowing. And babies are quite simple in the fact that they will regulate by feeding, so suckling, sleeping, or crying. Crying is a way for us to regulate our nervous system. Yeah. So if they are too wired, their cup is too full, that their nervous system is wired, they are not going to sleep. So you are left with sucking and crying, which is typical witching hour. You'll return them to the breast. If you have a higher supply, they'll pop off, act starving. You know you've got milk. You return them there, they'll 2-3 sucks, they'll pop off and cry, act starving, and you doubt your milk supply, but you know you've got milk. It's a really hard catch-22. It's because they're wanting to suckle to regulate, they're wanting to be close to you, but they might not want the milk that's coming out. So it's a little bit of a cycle. We're meant to have less supply at that time in the afternoons because babies are biologically driven to return themselves to the breast so frequently. So if you feel like you've got less supply and your baby's constantly returning to the breast, what they're getting is milk that's higher in fat because your breast is less full. It's like they're scraping the dessert tin. They're getting milk that's higher in sleep cocktails and proteins and all the things that are telling their system that night is coming. Melatonin. It's like laced with melatonin. So it means that they'll have a ton of short, frequent, high fatty feeds and eventually a chunk of sleep. So if we have supply that's beyond our baby's needs, our primitive lady in our brain is overcooking and throwing it at them, it means that they are feeding probably off a higher full, like a more full breast. The more full your breast is, it means that there is a different composition of milk within that breast. So they might be getting slightly different messages of sleep, and this is why feeding and sleeping, you can kind of adjust them a little bit to kind of speak to each other. So our circadian rhythm in the middle of the night, 2-3 a.m., that's where our prolactin hormone peaks. Prolactin is the milk-making hormone. If we get that stimulation at 2-3 a.m., it means that that's what's telling our system we've got a small baby, we don't want the next one anytime soon. And also continued milk production is needed beyond the next week or so. It's long-term milk production. So this is why we're not wanting our young babies under 4 months sleeping through. We want them stimulating you guys at night time, and they're biologically driven to do that anyway. So they're meant to be having those little feeds at night. Is that all making sense? Good. Is there any questions? If questions come, just throw them at me, yeah?
Feeding once a night, like around 2-3, is that normal?
If your baby's doing that and that's normal for them, if you're trying to manipulate the times, that's where you might cause problems, right? Because if your baby's doing something, they're doing it for a reason. I have great trust in babies.
Yeah.
As soon as we start tampering with things, that's where we might be causing different messages.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll get into it with the sleep because sometimes that does it with sleep as well. Yeah. So our sleep foundations, we have our circadian rhythm, which we've spoken about, and we have sleep pressure. They're the two biological sleep regulators that we are given, and that's pretty much our limit. So most people would know sleep pressure as wake windows. Yeah? And overtiredness, overstimulation is speaking to that kind of wake window sleep pressure stuff. The circadian rhythm, it is set by the sun. So we've got foundations in our breast milk. It's helpful. It means by 4 months, baby's gotten more messages that day is day, night is night. They've got rhythm where they might be 9:30 and they're like, hey, and you're like, you're usually due for a sleep now, but do we sleep or do we stay awake? If they're getting messages from your breast milk to stay awake and they've got the energy to do so, that's where I'd let them roll, because they're going to guide, they do guide you. They're pretty good like that. The circadian rhythm is set by the sun. So anything that you do around bedtimes, evening, nighttime, we send messages, but we're not able to manipulate what they do with how they sleep that much because it's to do with morning and the sun. So we always get told a lot about bedtime routines and a firm bedtime. It's not really a thing when we're talking about their biological sleep foundations, because early bedtime where we get to regulate and eat a block of chocolate and do all that sort of stuff, it's great for us. But if it means that you're up all night with your baby because their bedtime was not right for them, then we can kind of adjust those things. That's a sleep training world idea, having an early bedtime, because it's about what the parents would like. And that's where I go, you guys can do whatever you like. I valued sitting by myself, having my block of chocolate and no one touching me, and having some wakes in the night. When the wakes in the night got too much for me, that's where I forfeited my chance to do that, and I pushed my bedtime back to where my baby was naturally needing it, and you get less wakes. So that's where you everyone's going to have a different balance there, and there's no right and wrong. But it means that if you know about it and you have the information, you can manipulate it how you like, pretty much. So set by the sun. Have you ever had an excellent night and then tried to recreate the day to get the night again, and then it hasn't worked? Anyone?
Yeah.
Okay.
The first baby.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember being like, no, I swear I patted him this way. And he slept a bit more. No. So the way that we sleep across a night is often a reflection of a pattern that we have done 3 to 4 days prior. So say you do something for 3 or 4 days, around day 7 or 8, you might have that result sitting around there. So if you're constantly pivoting and changing and doing some things just way different, it means that it's really hard to figure out what's working and what's not. Or if you're not sticking with a rhythm or a flow for enough time, you don't know what the result could potentially be. So my suggestion is when we talk about that circadian clock, you've got to really focus on those mornings. So if you have, and it's a really bad example because you guys are all really exhausted with little babies, but think pre-pregnancy you, where you might set an alarm every single day for work, and it doesn't work with shift workers, sorry. But if you set an alarm every day for work, you got up at that time, but on the weekends you tried to not set the alarm, but you naturally woke at that time, that's your circadian clock being nice and firm. If you randomly did have a really long sleep in and your whole day is a little bit off, you might act more tired. That's what that dysregulation of the circadian clock looks like. So when we have a dysregulated circadian clock, we often have babies that appear more tired but are more wakeful at night because they don't have a very firm understanding of day, night. Also, there's no goalpost, meaning there's no start point to each day. So if you don't have a starting point to each day, it means there's no end to your night, no firm end to your night. And it means that you feel like you might be in a perpetual day-night cycle that never quite ends. If we have a firm start point and a firm end to a night, it means that I call it a morning anchor. It literally is, your day starts now, your night ends. You might be exhausted and tired, but it means that whatever you do with times of sleep and playing around actually has some sort of impact, because if they've got a firm end to their night, you're not just changing their goalposts and moving naps around and the goalposts are changing. You're going to be able to compress their night to a known end point. And that's how, theoretically, we work with foundations to get better sleep or less wakes. It's normal for babies to wake. 2 nights awake would be normal up until the age of 1. sometimes the age of 2. But if we kind of go, oh, we're having 5 or 6 night wakes, it's been more than 2 weeks of that, that's where we go, is it a developmental thing? Probably not if you've been doing it for 2 weeks. And then we go, okay, what can we do with our foundations or the way that we're approaching sleep that might mean that those 5 or 6 weeks go back to the normal 2 weeks? Yeah? Any questions with circadian rhythm?
Is there like a typical time in the morning that is like a sweet spot for babies to wake? Like, is it sort of with the sun? Like, is that?
So most babies will naturally wake with the sun
Yeah.
because of messages of their body in the day of being out and about and stuff. So when I do have a family that have extreme night waking, I take them to Paris. I change their time zone. So if you were to go to Paris today, you would not arrive there and be like, oh, he would typically be asleep. Let's make sure he gets to sleep. You'd be like, no, we're on this time zone now. Yeah. So you'd be waking up in the morning. You wouldn't let them overextend their sleep. You'd be out and about a lot in the daytime because you want to see the sights and sounds of Paris. And then at night, you might be out a little bit more at night. They might experience dusk. And then at night time, you're trying to keep them asleep. You're giving them different messages. Their brain's probably going, I know in Australia, but you're going, no. We're going to give them different messages. We're going to try and keep them in that sleep state as much as possible. And then we're going to stop them from their sleep once daylight starts. And we're going to power on through our day. Yeah? So that's what we do.
So is that like the possums? Like I had
It is
one,
possums.
And I was like, we kind of do 9, so like 8:30 or 9:30 is kind of the limit. But I had one when she went back to sleep at like 8, and I was like, so do I wake her up at 9:30 or do I let her sleep?
It depends on the family. So I call it a wake up by time. So have a limit to where your night ends. Yeah? If they happen to be awake before that, that's okay. Power on. You can decide whether you keep them at bay or if you power on with your day, but it should be that you have an end point to your night. So for some families, if I'm changing time zones for them, I'd be like, you've got to figure out what the earliest wake up your family can do and stick with it. Whereas for some families, like I know when I was in the thick of it with my son, 4:30 was fine because we're up at 4 anyway.
Yeah.
Whereas for some families, I'd go like, oh, like 7, and they'll be like, oh, that's pretty early. So everyone's different. But it's about trying to figure out where they're kind of at. Pick a time where maybe 50% of those days you would be waking, and then 50% they're already awake before it. Yeah? If the time that you happen to set is really, really early, which is fine, it's not forever. Because what we can do is daylight savings a few times to get them to a more regular time. Because once you set your firm morning, you get a little bit more predictable with what the day naps are going to look like. Yeah? Once you have a bit more predictability with what their typical is, you can play around with bedtime. Bedtimes are allowed to be flexible, and then you end your night. So if we happen to have your set morning is 5 a.m. and your typical bedtime has been looking like 8 p.m, then we know that if you want that 5 a.m. to daylight savings to 6, you're going to have to shift that bedtime and those naps. So we just need that firm circadian clock to be able to play with it. And sometimes it's just impossible if someone goes, oh, just try pushing back a bedtime. What you might be doing is trying theoretically to compress a bedtime and push them back. They'd be more tired for it. The nervous system might be more wired because the naps have been all over the place. And then you have their regular circadian clock set 5 a.m. wake no matter what. Yeah? Is that making sense?
Yeah.
So that's why it's about the whole picture and not just what their nap's doing, what their bedtime's doing. And this is why I like the babies to guide us. Because if we have a baby that's all of a sudden catnapping in the day, what's going on biologically for them, developmentally for them? Likely a 4-month-old baby who wants to see what's beyond the fence now, wants to have more stimulation in their world. And then we get told not to let them catnap, but at 4 months, we have complete total 24-hour sleep needs. So I would say my sleep needs are like 8 hours in a 24-hour period. If I try and go to sleep at 6 p.m, it's not the best night for me because I don't need that much sleep at night. So I might wake up a little bit more. I might actually start my morning wake might get a little bit earlier. So total sleep needs drop around 4 months of age. So whatever your baby was typically doing before 3 or 4 months, before they had their circadian clock set in stone, that their whole picture is just going to decrease a little bit. Yeah? That sleep amount that they take. But if we have it in our head that they always have naps at X, Y, and Z, and they have to have an hour and a half, and an hour, but their total sleep time has decreased by about an hour or so, and they want to catnap and you're trying to overextend their day's sleeps, it's where we're not letting them guide the way. We're trying to manipulate what their sleep's doing, and if you let them catnap, they would likely protect what they were doing overnight anyway. Yeah, because they've had a drop in sleep totals. So there's a real kind of common pattern that we see that happens. But I find in that kind of sleep industry, they might tell you to do something that's not quite optimal, and then all of a sudden sleep is really shit, and then you have to ask someone for help. And then it's an industry for a reason. So yes. Did I answer your question? Okay, good.
Yeah.
I think I went on a few tangents though. So that's circadian rhythm. Pretty sure I've said everything in that. Sleep pressure. We've spoken about them dropping their day sleeps and catnapping to protect their nights. And that's what sleep pressure essentially is. Sleep pressure, I think of it like a tank that gets filled and emptied. Yep. So the sleep pressure tank will get filled the more adventures you have. So if you are like today at home, it's a rainy day, you spend most of your day inside, it's going to take more effort to fill that tank than if you're at the beach with sensory nourishment. So if you have a sleep pressure tank and it's getting filled, what happens when it starts to overflow is sleep takes care of itself. That's the hormones tipping your body into sleep. It is really hard to tip yourself over into sleep and get over that edge if you're really wired. So this is where people talk about that overstimulated baby and overtired baby, but there are different nuances to it as well. So you've got your sleep pressure tank, and then you've got your dial, your nervous system dial. Yeah. So at 4 months of age, when we have a baby, I'm just using 4 months as an example because it's a really common one. If we have a 4-month-old baby who has had a developmental leap and they're wanting sensory exploration and nourishment, and we're hung up on what we've always done with them and times of day that we do the things, and we're too scared to give them the sensory nourishment in case they get overstimulated, what happens is we have a baby that might get their sleep pressure to say like 80 or 90% full, and they don't have much sensory distraction around, which means that they're going to yell at you that they're tired, but they've got 20% or so left to go. If you were to take them out on a walk or you're at the beach, you wouldn't know that their sleep pressure tank is sitting at 80 or 90 because they're sitting there distracted. So
Is that why they always, like she always says so much better when we hang out?
yeah, the four walls. Yes. The four walls of our house are the most low sensory environment for our babies because it is their home. Which means that what would happen at home, I would predict, is you're sitting there, it's about the time they would go to sleep usually, maybe they look tired, they're yelling at you, you go and take them into even lower sensory environment, their bedroom, and their dial goes up. And then you go, oh, I've missed the boat because you know, they're overtired. And then you start manipulating and changing what you've done for the next nap and the next day because they got overtired. But it wasn't overtired. It was understimulated. Not enough sleep pressure. Is this speaking to anyone? This was me with my kid. I was bouncing on a Fitball for hours trying to get this like bright-eyed baby to sleep.
Sometimes I find if I go into her room where it's dark, she gets shittier.
Yes.
Whereas if I go back into the lounge room where the TV's on,
Yeah.
then she'll calm down and then go to sleep.
Even outside in a carrier and you're like, oh, they're calm, but they're awake. I'm not sure what we're doing anymore. So I always say that if you're trying to figure out where you're at, take off sleep goggles and put on sensory ones. Yeah? So it's not that you're trying to throw sensory activities at them, you're just offering them a different landscape. So it might be that you just take them outside and put them down where their fingers can touch grass and all of a sudden they're fine. You're like, well, you were tired and yawning over there, but here it's like you're a new person. As soon as they show you tired signs in that landscape, you can offer them sleep. At least you're going to start understanding what their wake windows are looking like, and a wake window is allowed to change. Sleep pressure is what drives the ability to fall asleep. So me, I was the mum who was at the traffic lights moving the car to keep the baby asleep. In reality, I think back to my old self and I was like, he just didn't need that sleep, which meant...
Well, you see the traffic light, you're like, no.
Or you're like kind of like cruising and then you start doing it.
Well, like sit up, get on the brakes so the car's like...
Yeah.
Really thinking about doing a reverse.
Yeah.
You're like, this
Is there enough room?
Slow down, like, way back.
Yeah, so if I could go back in time, I would say to myself, don't get so hung up on those day sleeps. Day naps are designed to take the edge off sleep pressure that rises throughout the day. It's designed to keep them happy. It's not designed to completely drain that tank. Because once you've drained that tank, you've got to work really hard to get it full again for the next nap. Whereas what you're meant to really do is allow that sleep pressure to rise throughout the morning, take the edge off, keep rising, take the edge off, and then keep rising so it's at its absolute peak at bedtime so it can get you through the night. Does that make sense? Yeah. It's just a lot of experimentation needed because I can give you this advice, but your baby's different to your baby and your baby's different to your baby. So once we start knowing that we have the ability to play and do stuff, it means that we don't get so hung up on overstimulation, overtiredness, especially once we're moving through our developmental leaps. So it's a lot easier for a younger baby to get overstimulated and overtired because they don't have the ability to have that sensory distraction the same way because their world has not gotten big enough yet. At 6 weeks, they realise that there is a room and they're like, oh, wow, there's people here. I'll smile at you. Yeah. I'll track you around the room, but that's about it. At about 12 weeks, they're like, oh, there's an outside. That's pretty cool. But at 4 months, they're like, get me out of this house. Get me past that fence. I want to meet people. I want to see things moving. I want all of the stuff. And it just takes a lot of effort when you're really, really tired to think of the things. But it doesn't have to be activities. It's just landscapes. The beach is your friend, I promise. It's just hard we're going into winter. But still, sand and the beach is your friend.
I'm not sure how to explain this question well, Harry, but I keep hearing like feed to sleep. And I'm finding I'm getting stuck in this cycle. Like now I'm like, she's tired. I know she's tired, but I'm like also very worried about weight gain. So I'm like, I need to try to feed her. Maybe she's actually hungry, not tired.
All right.
So I guess it's how does the sleep and feed tie in? Like, are there times where they're like, they don't need to feed to sleep, they just need sleep, and it's okay to sort of skip that step?
It depends how they're acting when they're at the breast. So if you do offer the breast and then she's like, no. It could be that she's full and tired and might just need another way of falling asleep. My third baby would not feed to sleep, but it's because he had a little bit of a functional issue as well. Feeding was more of an effort for him, so he didn't want to exert effort when he was wanting to dial down.
Eating recently, I'm like, you shouldn't eat too big, but baby, it's like what you're saying, just take the edge off and then she'll be ready after she wakes up.
Pretty much, yeah. So a lot of people will get hung up as well on that feed, play, sleep routine.
Feed, sleep is all.
Feed, play, sleep is the beginning of sleep training. So sleep training is basically thinking that breastfeeding is the scapegoat for all bad sleep. So breastfeeding is what causes bad sleep. It's actually the opposite. But anyway, I'll get into that argument with other nurses. The feed, play, sleep means that it might work for some babies really, really well. I will say that. Some babies are like, oh, sweet, I can do this. I can wake up, feed, play, and then I can dial down in a different way and fall asleep. But if it's so much effort and you're finding that you're having to feed, play, feed, settle, feed, sleep, it's like you increase the amount of feeds because you're trying to manipulate what they're doing. That's where I would say give up and just do the play, settle, feed, sleep kind of thing. Feeding to sleep is what is normal. It's the quickest way that we regulate our system, and it means that it's the weapon to get them to sleep. It's really sad when you do lose that weapon.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to work.
No, it's really, yeah. My third one did not feed to sleep, and he didn't even like me to help him to fall asleep. He would get annoyed at me because I think he wanted to feed, but then he couldn't. This is all in hindsight. My husband was the guy that got him to sleep, and he sounds nice, but so by the third child though, he was like, I'm happy to do it now. And I was like, they have less tools than us to get to sleep. So I was like, choose music, whatever music you choose, it's just the same music every single time and get him to sleep. He chose Slipknot, and it worked within the first 3 minutes every single time, and it meant that me, as a mum, I was having to put Slipknot on in the car to get him to sleep. And I'd have to turn it up as well. So I asked my husband really nicely if we could adjust the song, and he chose a band where all the music is very similar. It's King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, if anyone knows it. Psychedelic rock kind of stuff, and all their music kind of sounds the same. But it means that even now, as a 4-year-old, we put that on in the car and he's out.
Oh, wow.
So it's any association can work if you're just, that's your norm. That's the way it is. So, and for babies with very busy brains, sometimes they need the chaotic music for the sleep distraction for sleep to happen. If you've got a busy brain and someone's put on really boring Twinkle Twinkle, you're still going to be thinking about the to-do list in your mind, and babies have massive to-do lists. Asking them to stop powering through their to-do list to go to sleep can be a really hard ask, because they'll still be looking at you going, I'm so close to rolling, okay? And you're sitting there going, just sleep, I know you need sleep. So I get it, I totally get where everyone's at, but it sometimes just taking the back seat can mean that you can see what they're doing naturally, and then you can work with that. And it's just so noisy on social media as well. That's another topic for another day.
On that feed to sleep, because then, like, she's quite a feed to sleep baby, and I didn't know if I was causing, like, not a bad habit, but, like, she slept through phases, and she's just changed, and now she's waking a lot more at night, and often feeding is what gets her, and they're quick feeds, but I guess it's more of a soothe. And then I was starting to wonder, well, am I kind of causing her to just, or if anytime I wake up I need food to get back, and do I want her to be able to, like, self-settle? And so is there anything with that, like, going into the 4 month, that's where I just don't know if she's past that, like, baby, just whatever they need.
Yeah, so linking sleep cycles and self-soothing are not teachable skills. It comes with development and the messages that you've given them over time as to whether sleep is somewhere nice to be or somewhere that we heighten to go to sleep. Realistically, we want their dial down as low as possible for as long as possible, so that sleep and being dialed down makes sense. Yeah? So if we have babies that are frequently waking at night but they're needing to breastfeed quickly to go to sleep and they're able to go to sleep and it's a 5-minute turnaround, that's so much better than them completely waking, asking for help, not getting the help that they're looking for first, trying to learn another way, then eventually maybe falling asleep, possibly in a heightened state, maybe, and then they might sleep what they need to do and then they're going to do the same thing again. So sleep training technically means that we sleep less as parents and the babies might have more time in their cot but less time actually sleeping. So when we look at the data, that's kind of what we see. A breastfed baby that's allowed to intuitively breastfeed as much as they need will often have more hours of sleep in the night and more sleep for the parents as well.
Yeah.
But then we get told it's bad habits and stuff and all that. So I totally get it. If you think about a baby in a sleep state and they're slowly starting to rouse, they're looking for the quickest way back to sleep possible because they've got sleep pressure there that they want to go to sleep. So they will choose the quickest way known to them, which is breastfeed, to regulate. Yeah. So they'll have a quick little nibble, regulate, fall asleep. Yep. So it's this really subtle rousing, not quite awake, and go back to sleep. So long-term messages that system is getting is that at nighttime we're not really awake. Yeah. That's where I think it might be short-term pain, but long-term I see so many benefits. The babies that typically are allowed to just do what they need to do will be the toddlers that are happy to go to sleep, or the kids that are that's just kind of what I see. If there's other things going on, there's other things going on. But I mean, in my experience, that's where I find it works for a reason.
Yeah. Because I felt like she'd been good, and I was like, oh, there's probably a reason why she's waking up at the moment, going and changing, whatever.
To-do list.
Yeah.
Nervous system dialed up a little bit, and she's looking for that quick dial down throughout the night.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. If we have babies that are having to hang on the nipple all night to stay asleep, I'm looking at airway. Why are they using the nipple to pull their jaw forward to keep that airway patent the whole night? And so then I'm going to be looking at different things versus a baby that does a quick nibble and back to sleep.
And what about where it is a bit augmented? Like we're probably waking up an hour earlier than needed for my stimulation. Like how does that tie into her natural behaviours if we're kind of tweaking things?
It depends. Because she's less than 4 months, that's where I kind of go, it's a bit of a free-for-all until then. But you're on the outwards of that, hopefully. Only because I know your story.
Yeah.
But manipulating, it depends on the whole, it depends on the whole story.
Yeah.
Like how functional feeding is and all of that. But you're not technically.
There's a reason it has to be augmented or something.
No, but so if you've got a baby that naturally wants to sleep and you're doing the quick kind of like dream feed because you've kind of just fed them while they're asleep, that's still same messages overnight.
Okay.
Night is for sleep, day is for wake.
Dream feeding is great. I would love it to be that easy always.
Yeah, and dream feeding is one of those ones where sometimes it can cause an issue and sometimes it can be great. You don't know until you experiment. You have to be willing to experiment with a lot of things. I think that's the hardest part when something is not that great but working okay. You don't want to make it worse, but you don't know if it could get better. And so, like, I knew that if someone told me to do stuff with my non-sleeper, I'd be like, I'm not risking it. So, it's very cute. I think I've covered everything for foundations. I think I've given you information overload, sorry.
No, it's good. It's super interesting.
I can talk underwater. Hence why I didn't prepare, because I was like, it doesn't matter, because I'll just talk about my brain.
Is it ask it? Oh, no, you go. You know how they say, well, like, when I say that, I mean,
Yeah.
Instagram says, like, her afternoon nap tends to be her best one. Like, she conks out of an evening, but then it's like 6 o'clock, 6:30, and it's like,
Yeah.
like, should I be waking her, or should
they not be wake proofing?
If nights are okay,
Yeah.
then I let them do what they need to do.
Okay.
So, like, possum's theory, like, I am no longer in possums accredited because I do too many other things, and it was very narrow-minded, in my opinion. It was like, all babies are the same blueprint, and I was like, the possums say not to.
Oh, not to.
Yeah. So it depends how bad the other situations are. Yeah. If she's wanting to sleep a ton at night, in the early afternoon, then I would be going, how set is that circadian rhythm, for one? Is she treating it like an early bedtime and diving into sleep
Yeah.
and using that as the first part of her night, and then
Yeah.
she's got the early morning wake associated with it? So it could be that. It could be that she, after that chunk of sleep, it's like, hey, I'm awake and I need to increase sleep pressure to get me through the night.
Yeah. Which it's not like she.
Yeah.
I've been waking. Like I haven't been going past like sort of 6:30, but she does. She wakes up, has a bath, plays for a bit, goes back to sleep. So.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we do.
But I just don't know how long. Like, do I keep pushing it and see what happens, or do I just it's working? So just keep.
If it's something's working, don't mess with it. Yeah, you're allowed to just let her do what she wants to do. It's when things are getting unmanageable that's where we start looking at the whole the whole 20. What I would do is I'd go, how much sleep are you offering?
Yeah.
And we'd figure that out.
Yeah.
And we go, okay, how much is she genuinely taking?
Yeah.
And then we go, where's the mismatch? And how tired does she appear in the day? How awake might she appear at the night? Is she just asking to go back to sleep? Because the range of sleep total in a 24-hour period is so variable. So you know when they're saying, oh, they need 15 to 17 hours of sleep in a 24-hour period, that's for like a high sleep needs baby. And I rarely work with those babies. I'm working with the lower sleep needs babies. So between the ages of 0 and 2 months, a low sleep needs baby can take as low as, I think it's like 8.8 hours of sleep in a 24-hour period. And the highest end is 17 to 20. So you can't compare those two babies. And if you tell a mum that she needs 15 to 17 hours of sleep for her baby and her baby's happy and thriving and normal with 10 hours, that's 4 hours of awake time minimum that baby's going to steal from other parts of her day. So that's where we've got to look at everyone so individually. And if your baby is meeting their milestones and you have no concerns and they seem happy and they're genuinely taking 11 hours in a 24-hour period, I would be using that as your base as to how you then flick that around your 24-hour clock. Yeah, knowing that they're going to have some wakes. But if they've got 3 hours of accumulated sleep in the day, that means you've got, 11 minus 3. Why is this so hard for me today?
Is that even right?
8, yeah. So then you've got an 8-hour night. But if you're then listening to sleep training stuff, which is saying you've got to do the 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., that's your 12 hours taken, and your baby's naturally only taking 11. Then they've got an industry that you then go, help. My goalposts are too far away. So sometimes it's just about... Exactly, yeah. And if it's not a problem, it's not a problem. If your baby is happy and sat there smiling at you and you're like, oh, you would probably have another sleep cycle, you can try for 15 minutes to get them back to sleep. But if they're not going to go, or if you're going to have to keep the bomb at bay, just let them play. Go outside, enjoy your days. Don't stay in a dark room in the day bouncing your baby who doesn't want to be asleep anyway. On that note, keeping days and nights completely opposite. If your circadian clock is scrambled, if you don't know the difference between day and night, and you're spending day sleeps in a nighttime environment, it's going to misalign your circadian rhythm. So
No blackout lines.
if everything, so I like to tell people that, and everyone will do with that what you will, the more that we're out and about, we do naps on the go, they're outside in sunlight for a lot of the day, they experience dusk. These are the babies that will align their circadian clock a little bit quicker than those that have their day sleeps in nighttime environments and overextend their day sleeps. So anecdotally, this is also why like the second, third, fourth babies are just better sleepers. They don't have the ability to kind of pander around and focus too much on sleep because you're just trying to keep humans alive at that stage. All right, now I need tea. Any burning questions? I'm sure everyone will go home and they'll be like, what did she say about that? That's a lovely cardigan. Both of you.
I was just
Yeah, no, I'm looking at both.
thank you.
It's very cute. Babies in knits is my favourite thing.
It's from that Tushy brand, you know, the nice sun hats? And they make some really cute clothes as well. Not many, but
Their sun hats are like
the best.
the best.
Yeah, and they last really long too.
It's like the little cap and then the side flaps, and then it's the stretchy fabric that grows with them. Like once I found that, I only bought those, and that's my baby shower gift.
Oh, nice.
It's like my known
It's a
like.
perfect gift, and they can never have enough sun hats. Yeah.
It's the one that's got the little hat and then the flaps though. It's not the brim. So it meant like when they're in the carrying it with you, they've just got the little side and the sides are covered too.
They've got nice sun hats for like older.
Good. It's really good quality as well. Like I still use the thank you. The hats for like I think my toddler hat still fits on my boys now. It's like looks obviously small, but it's fine. Like it's their hat.
If there's bits in it, it's just because I've lost the lid. And it's just the teeth. Can I wear the lid one?
I mean it's black, so it's camouflage.
It probably is. Ended up in the bin. Thank you.
Alright, I'm gonna turn this off so I don't